Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. St. Lucians are given a new date for the implementation of the Health and Security Levy. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Friday, 30th June 2023. Details after this important message.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. Opposition leader Alan Chastany has urged the government of St. Lucia to reconsider the implementation of the 2.5% health and security levy. In an open letter addressed to Prime Minister Philip Pear, he warned about the potential economic devastation if the levy is introduced. Zane Romulus of the DBS News World reports.
In his budget address in April this year, Prime Minister Philip Pear announced his administration's decision to introduce a 2.5% health and security levy effective July 1st. It was listed as one of several measures of the current administration to maintain the gains made in the economy and to stimulate further economic growth. According to the nation's leader, the levy would be applied to goods and services except for food items, medicines, selected building materials, and medical and security equipment. It would bring in an estimated $43 million annually in additional revenue for the government. Opposition leader Alan Chastany, in an open letter to the Prime Minister on Wednesday, called for reconsideration of the tax. Chastany argued that the levy was unconscionable and would have negative effects on the island's economy and citizens' pockets. According to him, the economy has still not recovered from the COVID-19 shock, and that businesses and households are still grappling with the after effects. In announcing the levy, the Prime Minister had stressed that it would be implemented to have a minimal inflationary impact, especially on the cost of food.
This levy will not be imposed on any food items. This means, Mr. Speaker, that the cost of food should not change because of the levy, unless prices increase from overseas.
In his letter, the opposition leader chided the Pear administration for misleading the public about the levy, calling it a disingenuous attempt to increase VAT back to 15%. Prime Minister Pear had stated in his budget statement that the tax would be specifically used for the health and security sectors.
This new health and security levy is also intended to allow every citizen to contribute to the pressing needs of the health and security of our nation. We anticipate that this levy will raise $33 million per annum to support the much needed requirements for these two important sectors.
However, at a stakeholder consultation with members of the Chamber of Commerce earlier this month, technocrats from the Ministry of Finance revealed that the levy was not earmarked for just these sectors.
The business community, however, generally felt that we're hoping that this would have been an earmarked tax that would go directly towards improvement in the health and security sectors, where there's an appreciation for that to happen. However, it was indicated that this was not an earmarked tax, and it is really just going to cover current expenditures.
In place of the health and security levy, the opposition leader has advised the Pear administration to instead come up with innovative and workable solutions to earn revenue. Meanwhile, the government on Wednesday announced a new date for the introduction of the health and security levy. It has been postponed to August 2nd, 2023. For the DBS News World, I am Zane Romulus.
The latest Don Anderson poll in Jamaica, commissioned by the People's National Party (PNP), reveals a growing number of Jamaicans who believe that the Jamaica Labour Party is leading the country in the wrong direction. Javine McLean of CVM Live filed this report.
The People's National Party commissioned Don Anderson poll conducted between June 14 to 18 shows that 15.6% of persons agreed that the country is heading in the right direction, which represents a 2.9% decline from the poll done in February this year. However, 53.3% on the other hand is of the view that the country is heading for the worst. This General Secretary of the People's National Party, Dr. Dayton Campbell, says is concerning.
I think that's a very significant figure. One, it is more than 50%, so it's an absolute majority. And two, it is more than 3 times the number of persons who have the opinion that it is going in the right direction. So an overwhelming majority of persons have the impression that the country is going in the wrong direction.
According to the poll, majority of the public says crime and violence is their main issue. This currently stands at 45%. 16% says the high cost of living, while the other 16% said unemployment and 6% said corruption. Corruption is an issue that has sparked a conversation in the public domain. The General Secretary noted that the opposition and the shadow cabinet have already signed the Integrity Commission Code of Conduct. However, he says the opposition is awaiting members of the government to also sign. Another question highlighted in the poll was if the government deserves a third term. 47.6% said no, and 31.6% said yes, while 20.8% are unsure. With regards to which of the two political parties are leading in the polls, when compared to the one done in June 2022, the PNP were at 18%, while the JLP were at 34%. However, that changed in February this year, with the PNP at 28.1% and the JLP's 27.9%. For this June, the polls show that PNP currently stands at 30.2% and the JLP at 25%. The Don Anderson poll currently shows the overall performance of the Prime Minister, which stands at 54.5%, while the opposition leader is ranked at 53.2%. We questioned Goling on the readiness of the party should an election be called.
I am confident that we can maintain it and, in fact, increase it as a lead, because I believe that history is on our side and that what we're doing is something that is inspired by the right set of values and the right approach to governing the country, which the people of Jamaica will increasingly see and feel that they can identify with.
Golding adds the issues within the party are not a threat to unity, nor should be a concern for the public. The polls were released on Tuesday during a press conference at the party's headquarters on Old Hope Road. Javine McLean, CBM Live.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Over in Trinidad, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has once again responded to the claims made by the Chief Secretary, Farley Augustine, that the Prime Minister was seeking to have his choice appointed to the post of Chief Administrator of the THA. Dr. Rowley sought to provide further clarification on the matter in the House of Representatives on Wednesday. TTT News has more.
Periods of evolution, the central government has been careful to keep a respectful distance whilst ensuring that everything is done to maintain the designated services to the people of Tobago. However, Madam Speaker, this did not prevent the authorities there at the first opportunity to seek to embroil the central government and especially the Prime Minister in whatever difficulties they were experiencing at the moment.
Dr. Rowley said the Chief Secretary continues to misrepresent the role of the Prime Minister, as Mr. Augustine has said that there was no consultation on the position.
Contrary to the Chief Secretary's fulminations and confused state of mind, there is no requirement for any consultation with the Chief Secretary before a designated officer is made known and available to the Prime Minister. It is only when the Prime Minister receives correspondence identifying a designated officer that the law requires that the Prime Minister consults with the Chief Secretary prior to the appointment of the officer.
In the meantime, and still on Trinidad and Tobago, the opposition leader there, Kamla Persad Bissessar, has forged an alliance with Gary Griffith to fight the August 14 local government election, with both declaring the common enemy as Dr. Keith Rowley, who must be removed. Renetta Burnett of HGP Regional News has more.
The former Prime Minister on Monday announced that the accommodation was achieved with Griffith's National Transformation Alliance, NTA, the Independent Liberal Party, ILP, and the Movement for National Development, MND. The UNC will contest 110 electoral districts, and the NTA will field 31 candidates with some of the smaller parties pledging to lend support to the UNC-NTA on the ground in the campaigns. Prasad Bazizar said people power is needed at the polls to stand up against Rowley in protest of crime, high food prices, property taxes, and the imposition of the inheritance tax denied by the PNM, and continued suffering of people. She said a united force will work towards rebuilding TNT as she pledged to secure this nation with 1,400 municipal police officers. 100 in every corporation are being hired to ensure there are more protective boots on the ground. The NTA presented its 31 candidates at the Queen's Park Cricket Club, Port of Spain, on Monday.
Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley, while on a trip to China, has expressed a profound grief over the passing of her country's fourth Prime Minister Lloyd Erskine Sandiford. Renetta Burnett again has more.
Prime Minister Mia Mottley has praised the contribution of former Prime Minister Sir Lloyd Stanford, who died on Monday at the age of 86, describing him as a true statesman who served Barbados with honor and the wider Caribbean with distinction. Mottley, who is on an official visit to China, said, "Again, it is with a sense of deep sadness that I say goodbye to yet another Barbadian nation builder, a true statesman, and without doubt a through and through gentleman of post-independence Barbadian politics." Mottley said in her statement the former Prime Minister, who served as Barbados' fourth head of government from 1987 to 1994, had the distinction of maintaining a political career of more than 3 decades without a single instance in which bad behavior or the use of robust language and colorful metaphors, so common to Caribbean politicians, has been attached to his name.
The Bahamas' Minister of Labor and Immigration addressed the granting of citizenship at a funeral service. More in this ZNS News item.
The Labor and Immigration Minister also today hitting back at former Minister of Immigration Brent Simonet, who yesterday called for his resignation after he conferred citizenship onto a mother and her 2 children during a funeral service on Saturday. Simonet blasting the move as improper, but Bell says the former minister has no legs to stand on, having been forced to step down from cabinet on 2 occasions. He adds that despite criticism, Simonet never called his actions unlawful.
I would invite Brent Simonet to examine his own record before he could point fingers. Here it is. We're talking about someone who introduced a Commercial Enterprises Act to allow persons in this country to bypass every process to obtain status in this country. We are talking about someone who've had to resign on 2 occasions from the cabinet of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And so his own record ought to be examined before he could point fingers at anyone. In my view, he have no moral authority to speak to me on this matter.
Asked whether he would repeat the actions, Bell insists the deceased served the Bahamas for years, due diligence had been conducted, and cabinet had granted approvals. He went on to defend the appropriateness of conferring citizenship at a funeral.
Well, the fact of the matter is, any place that can be done any place. And as I indicated before, and you'd have seen in a note that I was sent, he would have called me while he was in the hospital. I was in Switzerland at the time. When I returned, he was being buried within the week on that Saturday. And so in those circumstances, he called me on his deathbed and said that if I would, he would want his wife sworn in as a citizen in his presence. Unfortunately, he died before I got back from Switzerland.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
I am Eddie Frederick, wishing you a restful weekend. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.